Hello and welcome again to Casual Chat, the place to be for casual people made by casuals for casuals. I'm here, Alphi Windspring, and my guest today is Inde Sengalle. So, hello.
Well said. I'm glad you got the name right.
I've been practicing, so like glad that you can come and welcome to the show. And I guess for our fans out there, are because Twitch only has a 2 week thing. You can watch all the episodes, past and future, on YouTube. So check the main channel page for links to YouTube and see you there. Don't forget to like and subscribe. But first, let's talk about our little thing. We have the trailer comes out for like 3.2, and it's of course it impresses me. So are you impressed?
Well, I mean, I gotta say that I feel like they did it again. One of the things that I remember speaking to, some friends and family that play, they were just feeling really either overwhelmed or bored or a mixture of just a whole bunch of feelings. And, this time around, it feels like they're bringing in content for everyone. So hopefully, it'll serve us well and it'll come around often enough to be relevant and fun, even as we kind of play through it all.
Mm-hmm. And yeah, it's like new videos for new stuff. So check it out. The site is up with the trailer. It's on Lodestone, so click your way through and moving on. So we have the diadem. Few changes. I mean, the diadem is going to be more like a casual hunting thing, trying to get some materia, grade 4, grade 5. What are your thoughts on that, Indy?
So I gotta say that I'm glad that they're making them that much more relevant again. It's
Mm-hmm.
still a little bit unclear in terms of how the materia is going to affect our armors overall, but as long as to me it just seems like they're really trying to incorporate it in a way that is useful to us again, because when it first came out a lot of folks were a little bit disappointed, but me personally I was just thrilled because it reminded me of a lot of old school MMO experiences. Like, I played a lot of Final Fantasy 11, and there was a similar zone in 11 that kind of harkens a little bit to what they're trying to do with Diadem. So it's great to see that they're bringing in, while it's a bit of a tedious grind, it is of a benefit overall if you put in some work. So it's great to see that they're focusing on content that, albeit is kind of a time sink, it's still helpful and beneficial if you put in that much work for it.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, a lot of people got annoyed with hunts before, and they were a little bit tedious because, yes, it was a grind. It was required every patch, every new patch that came out, new hunt, new something to do with hunts. But hopefully, this one is going to be less of a grind and more relevant, as you said, to the actual core player.
Right. I mean, as long as we can all still benefit from being in the zone together, I think it'll be well received. At least for those who want to get involved with that. And again, it's great that they're incorporating more people, so everyone is kind of chipping in and contributing to the overall effort. You got the crafters that can, or the disciples of the land that can go in there and really change things around and earn things for different ways of interacting with the same content. So I'm just glad overall that they're giving everybody a piece this time around, because
Mm-hmm.
hunts were extremely and possibly still can be very tedious. It's great that they kind of help that out a little bit by giving the independent hunts, the personal ones you can get from your grand company, but you still kind of get the jerks on occasion that they hack, they spawn camp, any number of things that they do to be able to obtain prizes that some folks just will never be able to get to in time. So it's great to see that with Diadem being sort of either upgraded or made more relevant, more folks can get in on the action.
Yeah, and like aside from diadem, there's another thing that I'm interested in. A small thing in Gears of Change, but a very important thing: the Stone Sky Sea.
Oh yes.
Um, it's a nice little duty for basically DPS checks. Can you meet DPS checks for, let's say, this striking dummy mimics the DPS requirements of a certain primal, let's say Thornton. And if you can defeat this striking dummy in 3 minutes, you should have enough DPS in Thornton. So, what are your thoughts on this new little system for checking people's DPS?
I like it. I'll put that out there. I know sometimes it's a touchy subject for a lot of folks to, look at numbers, to study content, to learn rotations, and, find the right balance of equipment, food, potions, all of the above to make sure that you are contributing your best to a fight. I think this is great overall because it eases new players and sort of players that are still on the fence about dedicating more time to the more challenging aspects of the game. As it stands right now, there is not a great in between for players transitioning from either story mode fights or less relevant content into a more organized fight system, like a raid or dedicating yourself to farming primals and what have you. So it's great to see that they're bringing in just more tools and resources for people to get better at the game in ways that are don't have to be as offensive as showing up and having someone parse you through a third party program and then telling you at the end of the fight, we wiped because it's your fault, or you're not doing your job. That doesn't feel too good. I've had that thrown my way a couple of times. So while I learned the hard way, it's great to see that they're really giving folks an opportunity to get better while being constructive at the same time, and still maintaining the great come back and enjoy yourself attitude that this game really has.
hmm And I'm glad that there's also DPS check requirements for different roles, like healer and tank, because they don't necessarily put out the same amount of DPS. Like, of course, not the healer, maybe scholar, but still, it's it's still able to test other roles for the DPS checks,
Right.
and it's a nice. It works as two things, as an audition piece to get into a static, because I mean we have hardcore, midcore, casual core statics, and some of them might need requirements, and it's a nice way as an audition piece. I mean, instead of going to a striking dummy in Corythus and let's see how you do there, have you completed this duty on this job? Can you? And basically, that's
Right.
how easy it's going to be in
Yeah,
terms of completing that like that checklist. And then the other side of the coin is that you have this can I test myself mentality of
that's part.
can I do better? Can I improve my DPS? Oh, I failed. Let's see if I can actually improve and actually break the striking dummy in 3 minutes.
I mean, I agree with everything you said, Alfie, because it creates the kind of mentality that one is just refreshing to be around, because individuals that want to do better, that want to play better, hopefully inspire other members, and through that domino effect, other people get better. So having someone that you know is really trying their best to figure out how can I do better at my job, whether it's tanking, healing, or a standard DPS role. Now everyone can really put themselves to that test. I mean, sure, it's never going to be as effective as going into these fights and doing the best of your abilities. But again, as I was saying earlier, what a great in between step. Overall, just a step again in the right direction, because it'll really grant everyone that is involved with that much more capabilities and understanding of what their role is, what they've got to do to contribute.
Mm-hmm. And so we've covered those two topics. I guess it's perfect time to go into Tomberry Trivia Time, which is a little segment that I like to do. Um, Basically, we all love Final Fantasy, and there's some trivia things that you might not know. I mean, there's a lot of hidden things in Final Fantasy about primals, and I think that's what we're going to be talking about today. So let me switch over to Professor Alfie mode and bring you Tomberry Trivia Time. Ooh, sorry about that. Time for Tomber Trivia time. So, throughout the years, we generally call summons like Ifrit, Shiva, and Ramu differently between several games. To start from home in Final Fantasy XIV, we have primals. Normally, summons are beings that we seek aid from, but from aid from in battle, and that we can summon ourselves. But in a twist for this game, these primals are summoned by beast tribes in their time of need, which is not always beneficial to us, let's just say. Staying in the MMO sphere, we have the avatars, summons from Final Fantasy XI that are friends now of your summoner. Then we have the most popular name, aside from the general term summon, the Eidolons, which appear in Final Fantasy IV, 9, 13, Type 0, and Dimensions. We also have the lesser used terms like Guardian Forces in Final Fantasy VIII and Aeons from Final Fantasy X. Then we have the Espers from 6, 12, and Advance, which in 12 and Advance were particular because they were both set in Ivalice. They were referred to as Scions. Interesting point, each main Ascian in 14 is named after a sign of light, like Lahabrea and Nabriales, representing Pisces and Scorpio respectively. And they're from a set of 12 zodiac stones, while Elidibus, the White Ascian, shares the name of a secret boss in Final Fantasy Tactics, which also is part of Ivalice lore. He holds the 13th zodiac stone, Serpentarius or Ophiuchus, which in the game allows you to summon and represents Zodiac. Sound familiar? So that brings us back to our main scenario quest in Final Fantasy XIV. Although these beings are called differently across the series, they act like interesting web of ideas that we can draw parallels from and to some extent conjecture and speculation. And from time to time, we can assume like the next summon is going to be this because the element is that. So, and that's today's Tombeer Trivia Time. So, how do you like that, Indy?
That
Out of
was fun.
curiosity?
Yeah, that was fun because summons were, still are one of my favorite aspects of all Final Fantasy games, and it's just a little bit unfortunate that on 14 this time around the summons that we use in actual content leave a lot to be desired. But I just really love fighting them. I love learning about them and seeing new ways in which they create either new summons. So they might bring different mythologies or maybe even historical characters of lore throughout just different, how do you call it, like civilizations, like learning about Bismarck, learning about Ravana, and how the development team has really fleshed out and given great history and background to these characters. Really shows their dedication to that particular side of content. So you talking about that as a tribute time is great because it really is like one of the hallmarks of any great Final Fantasy game.
Yeah, and I mean, Final Fantasy draws from lots of different lores and religions, like Shiva, for example, from Hinduism, but like all the things that they draw from, they don't necessarily stay true to them. So we have Odin that is not necessarily the Odin of Norse mythology and
No, no, no.
whatnot.
It
So it is a
definitely
nice
there's
little twist
one
for
from
Final Fantasy.
definitely an order from Japanese fanboyism. Call it.
Yeah. So anyway, the next thing I want to talk about, and a lot of people want to find out about, is Alexander Midas. We're going into endgame mode now.
Let's do
So
this.
we have normal and savage, and this time around, normal and savage will be released the same time because I mean, can't wait
Hmm.
4 more weeks to say, yeah, your endgame content comes in 4 weeks from now. So what are your
Yeah.
thoughts of that this time?
Well, I mean, since this is casual chat, I'll give it to you from the perspective of a casual raider. Um, from my understanding so far, the development team really listened to many of the comments made on the forums, on their social media websites, on any feasible way of contacting the development team. It seems that players really got through to them this time around, and the content will be adjusted accordingly. So maybe that means more folks can get involved. With the addition of things like the sea, sky, and stone trials. It really shows that they're looking to get more people involved with this particular style of content. I'm excited. I personally have seen Enrage on Alexander Savage 3. So, while I'm not certainly no world first clears on my end of the spectrum, I can fairly say that the content was overall, poorly received. A lot of friends left the game. A lot of people sort of considered moving on to other things simply because of those fights. So, it goes to show that the players overall command the development team. We do have some say in what we want to play, and thankfully Square Enix is a brand, is a corporation that still kind of listens to what the player base has to contribute to playing their games. Hopefully that means that they listen and they'll adjust, and they'll
Yeah,
give
and
us they'll give us something worthwhile.
like I'm a big advocate for that kind of philosophy where if you don't like the art or the product, don't support it, i.e., don't buy it. And that's one way that helps developers and people that make products in general listen to the idea. Okay, no one's buying this. We're doing something wrong. I think we should listen. And sometimes that's a kind of like a tough love strategy, but
There you
sometimes
go.
it works. So this
We
time around, we have
Mhm.
gear for Alexander. That's, I mean, we have normal mode, and this is just speculation. I'm thinking it's going to be 210 gear for
Okay.
Alexander Midas normal, the new Alexander. Um, because one, it's a way for people to catch up to 210, and if it's going to be the same system as it was before, in terms of like you get one item per week and you need so many items from of a certain type to buy like a body piece, a hand piece, a leg piece,
Mhm.
then it's not going to be an instant catch up. So it's not going to be like the quickest grind to 210, but it's definitely going to be, by my estimates from last time round in Alexander Normal, it was 5 weeks on the optimal path. If you were going
Yes,
for the
yes.
fastest overall possible, it was
I
5 weeks
remember.
for one job. So, what are your thoughts on that? Do you think it's going to be 210? I mean,
Yeah, I think they'll go with the same strategy. I feel that that was well received, especially when folks kind of did the math and figured out what's the most optimal path to obtaining the equipment as quickly as possible. I myself followed that, and it worked out well. I was on forums, and it was it seemed to be received positively. So I think that they'll go again with that, and again, it'll just it's all about just easing as many people as possible into this kind of commitment, really, because that's what it is. You're getting together with, if you are actively rating, you're getting together with a group of individuals that share your mindset, and you try to make it work with the time available to you. Having ways for us to gear up slowly, having ways for us to gear up at both at a marginal pace and at an acceptable pace is just great. It gives a feeling of accomplishment, and I'll put my own experience into this example because I play maybe 10 to a good maybe 10 to 15 hours between the span of 2 days. That's how I like to really incorporate my playtime here, because it allows for me to get as much content as I can done while feeling that I am progressing and obtaining things. Call it a hamster wheel, sure, but I'll take that placebo effect for the enjoyment that I get of actually seeing myself get stronger. I went up an eye level or two in a week, and that's acceptable. That is
Mm-hmm.
something that I feel that the greater majority of players are willing to try out and incorporate into their schedules, their lives, and their availability to play the game. Hopefully, they do allow some kind, and this is where I like the idea of diadem and hunts, because those folks who can dedicate more time, who can be more involved with playing the game throughout the week, they can get something that while is it's almost a gratuitous grind, but you cannot say that they don't make that available for players. So
Mm-hmm.
again, they give just enough for everybody to say, I can put in my work and get something in return. And I think that's what ultimately makes everybody happy in the end.
Yeah, and like, I mean, so far from the trailer, I mean, Alexander does look interesting. Although one of the
Sure.
concerns is that, I mean, the bosses are interesting. The fight mechanics look slightly um, fantastic in terms of
Yeah.
special effects and like all
It's got
the,
Voltron in it, man.
yeah, it's like all the bells and whistles and whatnot. But then there is that worry, of course, that the bosses are going to be the same between normal and savage, and that's what gets people. Maybe that might be alleviated this time because if the gear for normal Alexander is going to be 210,
Yes.
then there is no actual need to keep grinding it before going into Savage because they're going to be released at the same time. You can just go straight into Savage after clearing normal once, of course. And then from there lies your grind, and there is where you're gonna get bored of a boss or anything. So I think that's where they're going to be focused on. So
So my thoughts on the content being released at the same time is that I think that at least we'll have to clear, um, Midas regular. No, isn't that how it'll go through? You will have to clear Midas regular, and then we'll have access
hmm but
to
at least you only have
Savage.
like you don't have to grind Alex regular like you had to do in 2.0 or
Oh,
3.0,
sure.
sorry,
As we while we
where
were
you
getting better.
grind it for like 5 weeks
Mhm.
trying to do the boss over and over in 1 week, and
Sure.
then the same thing the next for
Well,
4 weeks.
I'll
And
tell you this much. My gut feeling is that they're gonna pull a second coil of Bahamut on us, and from my rating experience, that was the fairest of the end game versions that they had us run through and fight against. It was the perfect blend of challenge, fun, commitment, strategy, all of that. It was just to me it was the best blend of content for everyone that went through it. If they do that with Midas Savage, then that the challenge will be there where folks will just in a matter of time be able to clear it, consistently go through it, and then just benefit from it, you know, getting with their groups, having fun and just having a great time getting through the content. So I don't think that I hope that they do not um, how can I say that they don't disregard the fact that folks aren't trying to spend 20 plus hours a day with these fights. Hopefully it's a mixture of difficulty and DPS checks from second and final coil incorporated with some of the mechanics and things that we've gotten accustomed to here now in Heaven's Ward. So overall, I hope it will not be a problem. I don't feel it'll be a problem that we can do one right after the other, because it'll just be more incentive to folks to wisely spend their gear, go into the proper leveling paths and figure things out in an effective way that'll allow them to do better in the more relevant and difficult content.
hmm and I mean, of course, moving on, the the next part of that is the gear for Alexander. So we have, I'm assuming, going to be 230 gear, and based on the pictures, it looks great. I love black and white schemes with touches of gold.
It's good.
It's always a nice way to go. You can't go wrong with black and white. Just saying. So yeah, the gear does look epic, and if history is served to be an indicator, this gear, this it will be like prototype Midas gear or Midian piece, whatever you want to
Some
offset the
funny names
Gordian
there.
piece.
They'll just type in
Midian
random
piece
letters. Yeah, random
or
letters on the
Maiden. Yeah,
my
that
dirt.
kind of thing. It's kind of like a dad losing at Scrabble. And then um you have this diable set. Hopefully it's going to be diable if it's just like the previous one, and it's going to be 230 gear, like 20 levels above. So
Yeah,
I can assume that, and of course, if it follows the same thing, healers, tanks, roles will have shared gear, except for the three melee classes. But then we move on to the next type of gear, which is the Allegan Tombstone gear. Which let's let's be clear, it's first going to be um, Tombstone of Lore. We're phasing out Tombstone of Law,
right.
Allegan Tombstones of Law. So the esoterics are going to be the new open 2000 cap, like open cap, no weekly cap,
Yep, they
2000
bump
cap
everything
still.
down one on the hierarchy.
And the new tombstones of lore are going to be what you use to buy this set of gear, which I think is based off the primals. What do you think?
Well, I mean, it's not even a thought; it's a literal thing because you got different horns, you got Shiva's staff, you got Leviathan's tail on ninjas. I mean, it looks great. I hope that's
hmm
viable as well, as you said. This, by now, that's just literally what we've been consuming for the better part of 2 years,
hmm
going on three even. So they got themselves into a pretty fair mix. I personally can't stand weekly caps, but they unfortunately have created a game that caters more to, hey, this is casual chat, so literally us. The game caters
hmm
more for individuals who play during, on the weekend or a couple of times at night. No more than, a day's worth of actual game time is spent throughout the week. And that's fair. I think it's fair overall to the majority of their player base. They got people occupied with fantasias and glamours and just kind of buying new sets of pink dresses for your cat girl. That's what they got.
yeah.
That's what they got people doing nowadays, and it's working for them. It's well received, and me on the higher spectrum of being casual, but still, not considering myself even mid-core because of the amount of hours that I play. Going strictly off the amount of hours, um, I am totally fine. I can jump in and spend a better part of my afternoon and feel accomplished. Certainly, I wouldn't feel that way if I spend maybe 2 or 3 hours, unless I go to the Gold Saucer or something. But overall, having the caps, having options for your armor, having different ways of obtaining armors, that some that aren't capped, some that are a little better and are, that just allows for a better sense of accomplishment overall without necessarily forcing everybody to play 3 4 days in a row to get everything done.
hmm And yeah, it's like, I mean, this is again speculation. This armor will probably be 220 gear. I mean, usually it's a even number. I say even number, like 200 to 20, like the middle
Yeah,
number is even.
sure, always
So
seems to be that
yeah,
way.
if past is a mark for bases, and then we have like the upgrades should be 230 as well to match the level of
Yep, and
the Alexander Midas gear, and
that's
they
right.
should be diable as well.
It seems
But
that way.
my oh, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say that you're talking about the items to upgrade everything, and that most likely will come around in I guess 3.8 or something, or 3.5 or whatever they might end up calling it. But
hmm
we'll just get another form of of consumable content, offer some equipment that is a great either side grade or something to hold you over, and it'll drop items that allow us to upgrade, and that system works. I think the system overall becomes pretty fair. Unfortunately, it does not provide enough meat overall for the more dedicated players to consume, but
Mm-hmm.
that's just the game that we're playing right now, and that's where
Yeah.
I really do hope that things like hunts and diadem do shine, and that they provide a little extra for those players, because those are the ones we're kind of rooting for at the end of the day. They're the ones kicking butt out there and making things happen and developing great guides and great strategies, and really turning this game into something wonderful. If it was just us casuals playing around, we wouldn't get anything done. Someone
Mm-hmm.
got to put videos on YouTube of world first clears so that we can learn what the hell to do with these damn fights. So I do hope that they are also considerate of those who can contribute more time and are a little bit more involved with the game overall, so that they can also feel the pleasures that we have when we come in here and we spend 5-6 hours on a weekend and get something done. Hopefully the player that's spending maybe 20-30 hours in the game a week gets also that same kind of satisfaction, and if not the same, then something close to it, because
Mm-hmm.
they're
And
paying
it,
as well.
yeah, and like, oh, and also like, it looks like this gear this time around is, just by the looks of it and by speculation and the fact that during the trailer there was not a lot of seemingly job specific gear to go around. It looks like this time it's going to be shared between roles. So you have tanks, healers, casters
Hmm.
ranged, and then individually the three melee. So it's going to, I'm guessing, act like the weathered set from
Yep, yep,
2.2,
yep. You got it.
where, okay, they were weathered, and I mean, I-90 was like job specific. Like you
Yeah,
had
your
your
artifact.
paladin, you had your warrior gear, but then when you got to the weathered set, you just had the weathered tank set, and they shared that. And I hope this time around it's going to be shared because it is like a little more forgiving, let's just say, between classes that you can share, because I mean you can gear up someone else without having to individually gear them up. But yeah, that's only a theory. I mean, it's quite plausible one and quite strong one,
Um,
but also, I mean, that's just based off of seeing the trailer, which if everyone saw about the new gear and whatnot, there
yeah,
wasn't a lot of class specific or job specific stuff. So maybe this summon set, icon set is going to be
just role
um,
specific.
yeah, role um, specific instead. And
And
then one of the biggest changes, like the last topic I want to talk to you about, is like tanks are going to now, as a warning, need VIT accessories. I mean, it's going to be the same kind of armor because it's going to be like um, it's going to be strength and vitality armor, the left side. That's not going to change. But now we go to vitality, which vitality is now going to affect how much damage you put out. It's like Ryoship even gave the warning: if you're wearing strength accessories, your damage or DPS will be lower.
definitely,
So
gotta
I,
make the
so what are
changes.
your thoughts on that?
So I gotta say that this is my most enjoyable aspect of this entire content or patch, because you and I were speaking about this a little bit earlier, that it's really going to just provide, again, more opportunities for people to get involved with more content. And why the hell not? We should all be open and willing to try, at least try the content, because you have somebody that feels left out, and that's not, that's such an unfortunate thing, especially in a video game, a social video game, which is the MMO genre and style. You don't want to leave people out. So when you create something that really brings people together like this, because a lot of folks really, if I use an example, I know a cousin of mine who was playing actually ended up quitting the game after the severe changes to strength and vitality, just the constant back and forth that everyone had with these views. And I'll put in his words. He said, "I'm a tank, man. I'm the big guy. I gotta have the health. I gotta take the hits, and it was just a style that was not welcomed by a surprising majority of players, and the fact that they're reworking these things and just making tanks more tank e, I guess
Mm-hmm.
they're
Less
another step
risk.
in the right direction. Less risk. It's it's just more enjoyable overall. You feel like you can contribute more, and I'll tell you this much: you're spending less esoterics or whatever the new tome is going to be. You're spending a lot less of that overall because I bought both sets myself, and I remember just kind of noticing other people getting left side pieces is way before I got in it because I'm focusing on I'm going to need some vit, I'm going to need some strength. Let me start with my accessories. It just I think it just works overall. It's a great addition. A sad one in the sense that I personally really enjoyed the strength style, the more
Risk
just
reward attitude.
risk reward combat oriented. I called it that killer instinct. It kind of developed a certain play style within me that I felt like I embraced well, and many other people also. But clearly it was not well received because they're changing the whole thing outright. So
Hmm. I mean,
again,
if I
the thing
may
is,
interject with like 1.0, vitality was the main stat for damage for
oh
both
yeah,
tanks. I mean, for
yes,
paladin, it was vitality and mind, because
uh-huh.
of the healing thing. Warriors vitality and strength, and warriors decimated in 1.0. I mean, steel
I
cyclone was
remember
just
I was
it,
there.
it
I was
was.
there.
I mean, is your vitality one, you get more health. Two, you do more damage. So why not? And I think that's the same thing that's going to happen here. Like on paper, it's going to be like less risk, same reward. So if you still go DPS, you will still put out the same amount of DPS. You just have more HP. Like,
Right.
I mean, and they're just going to be tuning the content anyway to what the DPS checks are with the new formulae across the classes. Because if people are going to get overhauls, then they're going to take that into account into their DPS checks. And I mean, in the end, it doesn't really matter what they do. It just matters end result. And this end result right now gives us more HP for the same amount of damage. And yeah, and I think it's a safer thing. And be as a healer, being prone to heart attacks by
Hey.
people by people dropping their shield stance and going all DPS mode and actually can't DPS in dungeons, which is sad. um, reduces the risk. So okay, I mean, yes, you you go DPS mode and you're wearing all vitality gear still, at least you still have the HP, even if you're not putting as much DPS. But
Right.
before it was like you're wearing slaying and you can't put out the DPS. What's the point anyway? So, but yeah, I like this change. It's kind of like less risk, same reward, and then it alleviates the sharing gear with monk and dragoon, which is an annoying part because that means there's like if you have a monk and dragoon in a party, you have four people, two tanks vying for the slaying gear. And
Everyone
then it,
wins.
yeah, I mean, it makes them tankier just by wearing vitality. It makes you tankier, makes you stronger. How can you lose? I mean,
I
so
mean, I think that overall, it's and we spoke about it again a little earlier. I put this at 95% success rate with a 5% negative, marginally negative aspect is that it's going to remove, I think, at least the that kind of aggression, that bloodlust, that yeah, I'm the tank, but I'm also gonna put out these big ass numbers, and I'm just gonna go ham as
yeah, it's
often as
just kind of like
possible.
I'm specking from other MMOs
Sure,
where
sure,
you could. I mean, the closest anyone got to specking was tanks because you could be
right.
very tanky or just go aggressive. And now that's gone, you still stay tanky, and then if you go aggressive, it's only in the form of dropping your shield stance
Right,
equivalent. So,
right.
I mean,
Um,
as a healer, I would say that, I mean, okay, there's no more real specking in per se, but now it feels safer to heal
um,
someone because
well,
they still have the health even though they're going for DPS mode and like
I mean,
berserk mode. But
I wonder if you healers will be required to contribute as well. I know a lot of folks were complaining that, you know, even healers had to DPS, but they were missing because there was no accuracy on the gear. They had to
Mm-hmm.
pentameld their accessories in order to be able to even touch a couple of spells on these bosses. So,
Well,
that's
the assumption was, I mean, for healers to do DPS, it was for the initial clears, not necessarily for actual clears, but for the initial clears, and of course 3 and 4,
for bleeding.
where the DPS checks were too high. Um, so like initial clears, DPS is really, or healers really need the DPS. I mean, I know like in Phoenix when I first went into Phoenix, okay, I have to be the one dotting Phoenix and baning it to the Blackfires so that it alleviates the DPS from actually attacking the Blackfires. Instead, they can
Yeah.
just attack Phoenix and continue their DPS and rotations and not have to deviate and
Yes.
just leave the little ads to a scholar. But anyway, I mean, yeah, we covered a lot of
It
topics
works
today.
though. It works. Yeah. I mean, I just wanted to quickly add that it'll just make everyone enjoy the content that much more. Hopefully you get a lot less finger pointing as well when when
Hmm.
someone dies. I hope so.
Yeah, so that was a good episode. I mean, like, I guess it's a good way to end here. And thank you, Indy, for joining me for this week.
Thank you, buddy. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, so like, stay tuned for next week where we're gonna deviate and not be focused on the live letter anymore. Of course, we'll be focused on the new patch, but we'll take a more casual look at things and see our ideas in a more free-form, less structured way. And like, I've been Alfie Windspring, and this has been Inde Sengalle,
You got it.
and you have been watching Casual Chat.
Peace.
So, thank you for tuning in, and don't forget to subscribe and like and favorite our channel, and check our YouTube for previous episodes. And until next week, that's it.